What are some of the other initiatives that, because you've been around the state doing these, what are some of the other things that you're highlighting?
Well, we'll be talking about education as well. So you know that parents are feeling as though they've been left out of that conversation in education. That's also across the country, but especially in Michigan, because our kids were out of school for a longer period of time than most states, but also they're very behind. So we just got the scores back. We see that kids in Michigan are years behind in learning loss. We also have significant troubles with reading, and almost 60% of our third graders failing their reading exams. So we know that education is a big part of it, and bringing parents involved and getting them involved in that discussion, but also regulation. That's something that I hear no matter where I go, whether it's farming, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's building. All of our job creators are saying, gosh, we just feel like we're crushed by government. So that's something we want to get into right away too.
Let's talk about education for a moment in two different veins. First, let's talk about the fact that even as you and I sit here and speak, the largest ever school aid fund is being implemented in the state of Michigan, and larger by far. I mean, having them grow year to year is not necessarily unusual, but in this case, we're talking about billions more dollars. We don't know what the outcomes of this year's bill will be, but we do know that some scores have continued to lag, as you point out. What is the solution, or what is part of that solution?
Well, that's why I've said we have a problem here. We need to look at the root cause and come up with a corrective action. So we really need to go to the schools and say, in your individual district, what is happening? Why are your scores so low? Because we believe that holding schools accountable to reading level is very important. All of the kids should be at the appropriate reading level, and it shouldn't be too much to ask. So our focus is going to be on reading level. That'll be probably first and foremost where we are zoning in on education, but also education freedom is something that I've talked about extensively. We want parents to be able to have the decision. So if parents feel that that school is not performing for their child, or that their child isn't performing well in that school, they should have the option to go someplace else. And I think that once we have those children in the appropriate schools, we will see our kids, our students across the state thrive. And this is something that we can look at other states and look at their model. Florida did this. They were in the bottom 10 states in the nation for education. Once they had an education freedom model, they ended up being in the top 10. So when you hear people talk about, oh, this could dismantle public ed, no, we want to make sure that public ed is solid and that they are producing opportunity and futures for these children.
And the other vein I want to talk to you about education is the way that you're being defined on education. And obviously the DeVos family came out in support of you early on. I talked with them shortly after they made that announcement before the primary. And now when you talk about education, the folks that support Governor Whitmer's campaign have really been trying to define you on two issues, on education and on abortion. We'll talk about the other in a moment. But on education, they talk about a DeVos-style education plan, which is whatever, is it school freedom or whatever that is defined as. Is that portrayal partially right, that you do agree with Betsy DeVos on educational issues?
I agree with education freedom, and that's something that she's worked hard on her entire career. And we have seen, as I said just now, we have seen results in other states that have been incredibly positive for both private and public school children. And that really is the goal. The goal is not to go after one style, is to make sure that every child can achieve an education through whatever style is best for them. So we don't want to make sure that we're not doing something. We want to make sure that we are leaving no wrong path for any child in education. And we're taking proven methods. What we're looking at is methods that create results in other states and saying, how can we make sure that that's happening in Michigan? And how can you argue? Michigan right now is headed toward being in the bottom 5 states in the nation. That's catastrophic. We have to do something so that we don't drive off of an education cliff in the state of Michigan. This is our opportunity to get kids back on track and make sure that the future of Michigan is safe, because if any kid is behind, that hurts all of us in the future.